All right, good morning, people. Bob here, back once again. It's Monday morning. Wake up. Time to start breaking down some Bitcoin. Let's get right down to it. Weekly chart in front of us here. I know it is early in the week, obviously 6 days and 12 hours to go in this particular week, but I just want to point out that in fact we do have a green start to the week. Don't get me wrong, we got a few green starts throughout the downtrend, but difference being, I believe, is that here we finally managed. It didn't close low, or it closed lower. Don't get me wrong, but we did finally manage to put in a higher low from a weekly standpoint as far as the wick to the downside. So again, it's none of this is to rule out the idea that we could just come on down here and just get this capitulation out of the way and then roar back to the upside. But at this point, with kind of the momentum seeming to have slowed a little bit, and then again here you did get a pretty significant capitulative week here, and then this week the sell pressure was greatly reduced. That would suggest that we do at least have a chance to go ahead and recover here. And then in addition, if you take a look at the MACD chart, here to here, there was no divergence. It was, this was a low, this was a higher low. But here we have a low and a higher low on the MACD, whereas here we have a low with a lower low on the price action. That is a bullish divergence. So it does look as though there's some feasibility to see that start to kick in here. We've seen it a little bit over the course of the last 2 weeks in reality, but it just, again, it never feels that way. So now the question becomes, how do we get out of here? Is it still feasible that we get this giant V recovery and just roast out of here? Sure, I suppose so. I'm not counting on that being a strong likelihood, but again, it's feasible. I'll bring the drawings back in here in a minute, but again, just kind of updating what we've been talking about. If this thing here is a nice falling wedge, we put a line through here, we put a line across here. We are this is the third touch essentially to the bottom of a falling wedge. What I would expect to see if I had a line here and the line here is that this thing comes up, gets stopped out here, and again, that could be this week, next week. You can see here that after kind of capitulative type scenarios, you tend to get the hardest bounce to the upside, that first wave back to the upside. So, the feasibility is it could roast itself straight up here, just get absolutely pummeled again, and then make another attempt. So you can see here like how this worked out. You had kind of back-to-back weeks where it made upside pushes, but it just simply couldn't break overhead resistance, and that's probably what will happen here. If it doesn't, I'll be fairly surprised, frankly, because again, we've still got scenarios where we got the 21 that's crossing, bearishly across all these other moving averages on longer term time frames. And so, yeah, there's a strong chance that, again, if we get some sort of rebound, that it may or may not come up to here immediately or in the short term, and then kind of roll itself over to get something of a double bottom, right? That would be a good reversal here. Right now, all we're dealing with is essentially operating within a pattern is what it looks like to me, and we're at the bottom of a pattern. So a lot of times when you see these reversals out of a falling wedge, you may get a secondary low here that still doesn't come down to this one, but maybe exceeds this low. So I still haven't ruled out the scenario that maybe we come back down here into these upper 20s levels, and you can see here it's kind of at least sort of selling off at the moment. But again, what I'd expect to see is either a slightly lower low than last week, but higher than this prior one, and then it start to come back up. Or this is fine too. If it's ready to go from here, then that's great too, right? Obviously, we're not opposed to that happening. So that's what I'll be looking for. And then again, if I drew an imaginary line across here, we're probably looking at something in between, say here 32.5 and here 36, 37 as being a high, right? Like that could be this week, could be next week, could be 6 weeks from now. But again, that would be, we still got to cross back above here, get the support of the 21. So think about that logistically, right? Like this still has to cross bearishly across here. It doesn't have to, I guess, technically, but it still looks like it wants to cross bearishly. Then the price action has to rebound up, gain support of that level. So, I mean, we've got, from a weekly standpoint, this thing looks like it could take several weeks to play out still. And again, that would make sense given what we had over here as far as trying to recover out of this capitulative type scenario. All that being stated, I don't hate what I see. Because I understand looking at the chart that there are some things to be gleaned from this that would suggest that we do at least have some upside coming, whether it's immediate or not is the question. Let's go ahead and get the drawings back on here for a second, and let's take a look at the concept again of this, kind of, I don't know, we've got something of a falling wedge, something of a falling channel. Again, if we treat this whole thing here as a bull trap, right? Like, I don't know if you guys remember back when we were talking about this little area right here, we were saying, well, it could form into this kind of a ascending triangle and then bust out of here. Well, it didn't waste any time. It, rip roared up and then just, bear flag ripped right through the bottom of it and just crap it out the bottom. Now we did hit our measured move target from this pattern. You can see that would get us down to here. So in terms of that aspect, we're in a good position there. Again, assuming that we treat this entire move as a bear or a bull trap, and we don't validate the price action itself, then we don't really have a whole lot of room to operate here, right? We don't have a ton of room. Let me get rid of this line. I don't know what that line is really representing here. Oh, just in case we formed a kind of a flag this direction. So let's get rid of that, actually. We'll keep this one. And actually, let's get rid of that fib analysis as well. We won't worry about that for the moment. Probably, actually, what we'll do is we'll drop a new one on there, and it'll show the length of this move from here to here. Because what we'll be looking for is a 702 retracement from that full move, and then eventually a 1.618 retracement, which I'd imagine takes it up into this range up here somewhere. Matter of fact, while we're just talking about it, why don't we go ahead and do that? This won't be a reverse fib. This will be like a pretty standard one. And you can see here 1.618 takes us back to about 57. And again, I don't know that we end up putting in a new high in this Bitcoin bull cycle. It seems fairly unlikely. So I think that region is still going to be where I'm going to look to kind of get stopped out. And it would be totally sensible too, right? Because we've already put an attempt here, and then let's say that this wedge becomes this falling channel. So maybe we actually come all the way back up to here-ish. To put in a retest. Oh, perfect. That's right where we were talking on the weekly, where this could be a good bearish retest. One more rollover. The 200 will be sitting there waiting for us. Maybe we get a bounce. And think about it this way. I mean, I don't know if it takes a few weeks to get there, but if it does, this is all of a sudden maybe up here. And then at that point, that's the perfect falling wedge breakout, actually, is to get to roll over, retest this line down here, and this could very well be there at the time. So I mean, there's some logic to be taken from looking at the price action and seeing what we're seeing. Totally would be logical to eventually over the course of maybe a couple weeks though, come on up here, roll over, and then test down here before going on to finish this thing up. And same idea here. Let's say we took this right here, we measure a move out of this half pattern here. We don't really need the whole thing. Let's say it happens in November, and then all of a sudden, boom, 50,000. So maybe let's say it happens a little sooner, and then boom, here we are. Let's see. Yeah, actually, this is probably a perfect. So right around that 55. So yeah, let's say that sometime in September, maybe this thing actually starts breaking out from down here. you come down here early September, by October, November, whatever, we're rounding out, and then this year ends in a bang before we go and get destroyed next year potentially. So, I don't know. Again, I can only tell you guys what I see and what can happen. Simple fact of the matter is, if we treated this as a rising channel, which, maybe not. We certainly have not had a measured move there. That's 16,000. Let's say that this was a head and shoulder pattern. Same idea. That puts us way down here, about 15,000. So, I mean, there's some different patterns at play here that I just can't, necessarily say what the actual pattern is at this moment, just because, you look at this and you think, all right, well, I got several to work with here. I don't know if this really could be a head and shoulders, because this shoulder came up well above the level of this shoulder. So maybe if we can find a way, maybe this ends up being a bear trap, right? We come back up here, get support here. Maybe we don't lose this again, actually, right? Maybe that happens that way. We don't lose this again, and we just come straight up through here. Feasible as well, right? I mean, maybe we come back to the top of this pattern, boom, there we are again, 55,000, and then roll over for it. But at least again for this week, I see, I do expect that I'm expecting this to be a green week. Knock on wood. I'm expecting this will be a green week. I do expect this will be the start of some kind of recovery, whether it's a V-shaped crazy just roasting out of here. In the next 5 weeks, we see this massive move and then just dies. I don't know. But you could see here too, like, let's say this was forming an inverse head and shoulder. Here would be one shoulder, we're forming a head, and then maybe we form another shoulder. So maybe this actually does get back up above here, finds support, bounces around in this garbage between these levels for a bit before finally going on to make one final move. There are different ways to look at this, and really, again, I can just tell you what options we have. Let's zoom it in a little bit here. So it's still tough to tell at the moment what we're working with pattern-wise. If we take this downtrend line, the bottom of this downtrend, which again, it was really only truly valid up here. Since then, it's pretty well lost it. But then you come down here and it started being valid again. Well, Bitcoin broke that yesterday, right? Or day before yesterday. Broke that. Volume was okay. I mean, this is some fairly paltry weekend volume, which is typical. Don't get me wrong, but and then the one thing I'd see here is that this could very well be hidden bearish divergence, and then also this is kind of in a rising wedge pattern, which is bearish. So I still wouldn't be terribly surprised if Bitcoin at least comes back down here and actually tests this line. Wouldn't be deeply surprised. So one more time at 30,000, but at this point we've also pretty well, I mean, it found support there and started out the week and the day basically right there at 30,000 or above. And go back here, we closed out the week 30,293. So I mean, we found support at 30,000 to end that week. Hopefully that will be maintained, and then at that point I'd expect potentially a move today up to around this level. And who knows, maybe we even poke up here to this 32,866, assuming a few things, of course. Now, the stock market is trading green pre-market. I saw the Dow, or not the Dow, I saw the S&P, and I saw all the implied opens. And the current implied open puts us right about here, last I looked. So based on this idea that this is a supportive and resistant line, then we come up here, maybe within the first hour of the day, we're retesting this. Or, alternatively, we kind of had a similar pattern form before, didn't we? If you look at the RSI over here, you kind of had this small uptrend, this real big move to the downside, followed by this ridiculous rip to the upside, right? And this is only an hourly chart, so I won't get too caught up on it. But if we follow this concept here, then it could very well come up here, find some support, and then ride this line right here. I put this rounded bottom on here a few days ago, saying, all right, well, since we lost this level, this is the most logical thing for us to do if we're going to reverse out of here. And so far so good. Now the question becomes, does the price action manage to get up here and above it, up to here? And that would break 3 different trend lines. So I'm not necessarily counting on it coming way up here, but I think, if we come up here, kind of roll over, then this is what we've been talking about as far as when these rounded bottoms fall out. If we fall out here, this thing will just roll right over, and then we're coming down 3,600-ish, 35, 37, 36. But if we can just simply come up here, come down, swoop up, then this thing all of a sudden, we've got an SPX that all of a sudden looks pretty good over the course of the next, I don't know, couple days, I would say. I mean, this takes us out, a couple weeks, and then all of a sudden you got an SPX that comes right back up to this level. So totally logical right there, and that's probably what I'm going to be looking for to actually happen. I don't know that necessarily what we have here is a strong enough pattern for me to feel great about just continuing to rip to the upside now. So I would be more inclined to believe something that would be like that. We'd come up, come down, and then hopefully bust down out of there. But again, you can see here that when this thing recovered, it really shot up hard and then kind of plateaued, did this little mini parabola before falling back over. So same idea. I mean, this, if I'm looking at this and that looks a lot like this, then, assuming that the chicken is still a chicken, then this thing rolls back over after maybe doing something like that. But this was good. The other day I was adjusting my chart. I had this line at 39.33, which is exactly where the implied open was when I last looked. As of this second, it's 39.37. So you figure that puts you right about here, which would act as a resistance. But the interesting thing is whenever you fall out of a pattern and then you break back into it, you at least assume that you come back to the top of the pattern. So my assumption is that we probably will come up somewhere into this range, potentially roll back over, and then start making some more progress to the upside. Or again, maybe come up here, kind of meander a little bit, slowly but surely curve our way up, just to come right back down. So we've got a few different approaches we can look at here, but I think it's beginning to be a safe assumption that to an extent we do have something that would resemble a bear trap. And again, it's not to say that this thing won't continue to come down, but at least in the short term, it does seem as though this thing could qualify as a bear trap. As you can see here that there was some decent support as far as a few weeks that did close at this level. So again, some feasibility here that we do see some recovery. I came into today not really sure still, because I've read some articles recently, and it was talking about the COVID-19 sell-off, and it was like $80 billion worth of equities that exchanged hands during that capitulative event. And so far, at least per this article, from here, I guess, down to here, this is only about $40 billion. So, there are some in the market that just don't feel we've had enough downside yet, which, again, going back to our Bitcoin chart, like I said, when you get these reversals in a falling wedge, sometimes that third candle can actually come down a little bit lower than the middle candle, but it doesn't typically come down as low as the candle prior. So again, if we bring that up over here, we had this candle, and actually technically the wicks is what we're looking at. Wick down here, lower wick, and then we can still, again, I'm not rolling out another wick down here or even down here. And again, you can see we're still, maybe $100 less than where we were when I started this video. But so yeah, I mean, again, a couple different things. But the interesting thing in comparing this to the SPX, I mean, even though they're in very similar areas of the chart in terms of, it's below the 100, it's above the 200 on the weekly, but the SPX is actually a little bit behind in terms of, the progression here. So who knows? Maybe we may actually, it's feasible. We may actually start to see Bitcoin decouple from the stock market just a little bit, perhaps. even on Friday, I'd say the Bitcoin had a stronger day on Friday, I feel like, than the stock market did. So we'll see. Yeah, I mean, you can see here, I mean, Friday wasn't great. Now the stock market rebounded, but then, again, Bitcoin, if I brought that over here and pull up the daily on Friday, it actually, let's see, so it's Sunday, Saturday, Friday. Yeah, so I mean, at least ended slightly green. So anyway, looking for potentially some upside here, though. I mean, I could probably put a little parabola on here, which means that this one, if we're going to get a decent day here today, this thing's going to start taking off here soon, and probably get up to this level, like right here maybe, or even here. 31.8 would be a number I would look for. And then at that point, maybe we spend a day testing out support at 31.3. And again, that would be how we would continue the uptrend. But I came in, pardon me, I came in kind of wondering, if we'd get that last capitulative type event, and the fact that we've yet to break these highs presents the only case in my mind that suggests we still could roll over. And again, this was paltry volume. So again, there's still some reasonable potential. And again here, excuse me. And again, just because, again, this is a little rising pattern. But if this thing does shape out into something of a parabola, then obviously it changes the trajectory, and that would get us, say, back up to this level, 1, 2, 3 touches. This third one could pop through. So there's some feasibility. Let's go ahead and zoom in on some shorter term time frames here. Let's get the shorter term time frame chart pulled up. Interesting thing is Bitcoin, I mean, really all weekend. So going back to May 20th, so it was 21, 22. Yeah, so Friday, I mean, we came down here, bottomed out, and it's actually held an uptrend ever since. The only time that we broke the uptrend was right here temporarily. But you can see I'd had this parabola on here. You got a slight bearish fake out. It double bottomed basically right here. Boom, recover. And then we just kind of been making actual positive progress since. If it just continues to hold an uptrend, I mean, it may very well not come back down here. I mean, that's plain and simple. Like, if it continues to maintain this uptrend, and you can see here, the bulls just keep fighting. Every time it's touching a trend line that exists, they're sitting there fighting for the support. And it was just this, like I said, this little area right here, and then this little spot right here that broke the overall, that broke the uptrends that they were riding. But again, it's still a macro, if you will, a short-term macro uptrend. I could come through here and put that right there. So then you almost kind of had this rising channel, which now we're at the top of the channel. Now here would be the one thing I see at the moment, and the bulls have been fighting so hard. I'm not inclined to bet against them at the moment, but you do kind of have this little double top right here. This was a bearish pattern to begin with, so it should have broken to the downside. So the only thing I would say is that, if this doesn't continue the breakout, then we do come back down into here, and we would probably be short down actually to below this level. So that's where I'm saying there's still some feasibility that we do actually come back down here. But again, it's the bulls keep fighting, so I'm not. It's until or unless it actually starts making progress back down the chart and it breaks this overall uptrend. I'm not gonna be betting against the bulls at the moment. So, and plus again, I mean, 7 straight weeks of red and then barely green this week. So let's not talk about downside. Let's talk about making our way back to the upside and hopefully really putting in some moves here. Like I keep saying, I mean, this thing is going to start to recover at some point. It should be relatively soon. It may not be a permanent recovery or anything. I mean, none of it's ever going to be permanent, but it may not be like a something that we can be like, yeah, it's going to continue to hold and it's just going to keep going. Again, I'd be highly inclined to believe that this is, at least in the short term, our upside. until or unless something changes on this chart. So, I mean, we're still in a buy territory here. This is very likely hidden bearish divergence. This, think about this. This is showing that we flipped positive on the MACD, and we've got this green, which should be higher than these levels. And you can see here, I mean, this is all red, and yet basically every one of these candles closed at a higher level than where we're at now. So again, yeah, I mean, there's still some signs that this thing rolls right on over. And then if it does, again, I'm looking down to here maybe. And then at that point, I do think, and I would expect that we do recover up. And then we make our run at about 36-ish thousand. But again, hopefully we first start by just kind of making a run at this 31.8 level so we can at least show that the bulls have tried to make some sort of an attempt here. So we get a rip and then a pullback, and that would be totally logical too if that ends up happening, because again that gives us another bear flag comes up here. Looks like we want to try and do something, maybe even pokes its head above this 32 level and then falls right out and through. And if that happens, then again we're right here back at this 26 range. So we've got some upside and downside targets. We'll get out here, look to see if we can find something where we can make some money off this thing. Again, beauty is at least we're not out here getting shellacked like the rest of the market is. I know that if people had, if there were people out there who knew what was coming a few months ago, and I think I told you guys this 2 months ago, I was looking at the SPX and I'm like, yep, this thing's about to head to 3,900, and I did that. Right about here. Yeah, I'd looked at that this day specifically, and I said, yeah, we're heading to 3,900. Got a nice recovery first, roll over. Here's our 3,900. So again, I legitimately sold every stock I was holding in my 401k. I sold it during this recovery right here, and just been sitting on that cash in. So again, I think if people understood what was going on out there a little bit better and kind of look at the market and see what's happening, they would have probably done the same thing, and they'd be sitting on piles of cash ready for a recovery. Well, that's where we're at, right? That's where we're at in this group, and that's what we're planning to do, is buy into the recovery and ride this thing back up to wherever it's going to get us to. Not specifically SPX, but you get the idea. And again, I think that a recovery to this level would seem totally logical whenever that happens, because again, that seems to be a pretty good indication that this was the level that's been holding us down. Man, looking forward to seeing some green out there soon and sustained green, and we'll just go ahead and ride the wave. Hey, we appreciate you guys. Again, as always, hope you enjoyed the content, and I'll be looking forward to catching up again.